Get into factoring trinomials, just a quick terminology. The top line is in factored form and the bottom line is in expanded form. When you got factored form, you want to take everything from your first factor, in this case just the x, and you want to multiply it by everything in the next factor. And your first factor could also be a binomial itself. And in this case, you want to take each of the terms from the first factor and multiply them by everything in the second term. So I take this x and I say I intend to multiply this by everything in the second term. And I intend to take the 3 and multiply it by everything in the second term. And you may hear about this as FOIL, but I want to focus on this by using the distributive property twice in this case. And this will help you when you get into grouping. So we get down to a trinomial. When you are factoring trinomials, our goal is basically to go backwards. Our goal is to take a trinomial that has 3 terms, an x squared, an x, and a constant, and factor it into a parentheses upstairs with 2 binomials typically. So what I want you to focus on is I want you to focus on patterns. So when we look at these 4 problems that have been worked out, we want to try to find some patterns going on here. We'll notice in this first one we have x plus 6 as one term times x minus 8, and I show the steps here and I get down to x squared minus 2x minus 48. And we're looking for some patterns, and you might say, well, okay, so the first pattern difference between the first 2 boxes is I have a subtraction and I have an addition sign, or I have a minus and I have a plus for the second term. And that's good, we need that, but that's not the first thing that you should be focusing on. When you're looking at trinomials, you want to focus on the sign for the constant term. Whether it's negative or whether it's positive. And then you want to find out, why is that going on? So if we look at this, when we have a negative sign for the third term, we notice that up top, the 2 values, one is positive and one is negative. So one time the 6 is positive, one time the 8 is negative, and vice versa. But on the other side, when the constant 48 was positive, both of the signs up top are the same. So on the left, we have different signs. And on the right, we have same signs. So we want to focus on just same and different. Now, obviously, there's 2 cases where we got different signs, and there's 2 cases where we got same signs. So there has to be some more secondary things to focus on. And what we want to focus on is that each one is a different concept. When you have different signs, and we got a secondary issue of whether it's positive or negative, this matters which number is bigger. So in here I have a negative sign. A negative 8 is bigger than a positive 6 by, again, associating the sign with the actual number. So making this x minus 8 really as thinking of it as a negative 8. And this x plus 6, thinking of this 6 as a positive 6. So negative 8 plus 6 gives me a negative 2. And on the other one, the 8 is bigger than the 6, or the positive number is bigger than the negative. And positive 8 take away 6 gives me a positive 2. So in there, when I have a negative at the end, I know I'm subtracting the 2 numbers, and the bigger number gets the sign of the middle sign. when I have the same signs on the right side, so when my 48 is positive, I'm either positive, positive, or negative, negative. So in this case, if they have the same signs, and I have a negative in the middle, my secondary issue says they both are negative or both are positive. So this is the first thing you're focusing on, is I should be able to go through and I should be able to figure out how to set these up. So let's go through a bunch of these problems and just set them up without putting the numbers in. First thing I focus on is whether this is positive or negative. And in this case it's negative, so I know that I have different signs. So I know that I'm x plus a number, x minus a number. I know that secondary issue was the sign in the middle. That's a negative, so I know that my larger number is here and my smaller number is here. Come down to the next problem. Again, we're just setting these up. My first issue is that I have a negative sign, which means I have different signs. And my second issue is that I have a plus sign, so I know my larger this time is on wherever I put my positive, and the smaller is here. Same issue on the third one. My first thing I'm focusing on is right here. This says that I have a positive and a negative. This one, my secondary issue, says that my negative is larger and my positive is smaller. My next two, I have a plus sign on the sign that I'm focusing on first. This means I have the same sign, that they're both the same. So now I need to figure out if I'm going to put plus plus or minus minus. My secondary issue is that I have a negative here, so I know that they are both negative. So I have x minus and x minus, and here it doesn't matter on larger or smaller because they both have the same sign. The next one, I have a positive, so I know I have the same sign for both of them. And when I look at my secondary issue of the sign in the middle, I know that they're both negative. And then the last one, again, always focus on that last number. I know that I have one positive and one negative, and my larger number is going to get the sign in the middle. So you'll notice I went through each one of these separately. Once I go through them separately, then I can very quickly come back and figure out the numbers. Just like before, I'm focusing on that last number first, the constant. Here I want two numbers that multiply to 16. I want them to be finding the difference. That when I subtract them, I get that middle number. So 16 minus 1 is 15. That's not it. 8 minus 2 is 6. Yes, that's it. My two numbers are 8 and 6. And then I can very easily come back and say, okay, between 8 and 2, which number is smaller, which number is larger? Well, obviously 2 is smaller and 8 is larger. Same thing for the second one. Focus in on the 30. I want two numbers that multiply to 30 and have a difference of 7. 30 and 1, 15 and 2, 10 and 3, 6 and 5. And I don't have to write them all down. I'm just expanding to show you what's going on in my brain. But 30 minus 1 is 29. 15 minus 2 is 13. 10 minus 3 is 7. Hey, I got a winner. I know which number is bigger between 10 and 3, and I'm just going to put the 10 with the larger and the 3 with the smaller. Now if I jump down to the next one, or the 2 down, here I want to multiply to a 15, and I want to sum, because they're the same signs, of 8. And I already know that both of them are negative, so I don't need to stress that it's a negative 8 I'm summing to. I already know that they're negative. So 15 and 1, 3 and 5, or 5 and 3. And this time I'm summing them, I'm adding them together. And here it doesn't matter the order, so the order only matters when I have that different signs. So with these tricks, this is the procedure you want to use when you want to factor your very straightforward trinomials.